Okay, hi everybody. Mick Griffin here. I'm very excited to introduce you to today's recorded talk, which is an Infoshare Worthy Talk. It's going to be a number of video conversations and chats with very experienced people from all over the world. And today we have a fantastic guest in Agata. Agata, could you introduce yourself? I'm really happy to have this talk today.
Yeah, sure. So actually, I'm originally from Poland as well,
Yes.
but I currently live in Munich in Germany since quite some time. And I'm the head of marketing at Piktochart. It's a fully remote company that focuses on visual communication. So we basically offer different types of solutions and templates for turning your lengthy text content into a more digestible visual version. So it could be reports, presentations, infographics, and things like that.
Okay, perfect. And you know, this is not the first time we've collaborated. Very luckily, I was very lucky that Agata joined us at Pipeline Summit last year, which is a partner company of Infoshare. And yeah, I think we even talked. I found my Piktochart registration email from 2014. Yeah. So yeah, maybe it leads into a really great first question, because I still remember that. You know, there was big talk about taking content from long written content and making it more easier to digest. Is that as kind of real today as it was, you know, back in the early 2013 and 2014?
Yeah, I actually think that it's even more real, right?
Yeah.
So, and you know, in general, this whole rise of content started with the moment internet became mainstream, right? And then it went from Wikipedia, which was still more text-based content and obviously search results. But then YouTube came, and you know, recently Netflix came, and all of it has contributed to this aspect that it's moving more into the formats that make it easier for people to consume content. And if you actually think about it, even before the pandemic, actually on average, the statistic shows that we spend 71 minutes a day watching Netflix. And if you compare it to the time we spend with our families, it's actually way more.
Yeah.
And now think about it during pandemic, it probably has doubled since then. So we are very good with consuming video content. And that's why there is this rise as well of overall this whole visual things like webinars, videos, but also things like infographic, which have been on the market for a longer time, and in general visuals. Instagram became such a popular platform because it's proven that actually ad recall rate is 3 times higher for Instagram than other social media platforms. And that's also because of the images, because people are basically able to memorize what they see way better than they would memorize text as well. So it's very applicable, especially now, because there is way more content than we would ever be able to consume, right? Right now we have 4 times as much content as we did 20 years ago. So, you know, and our brains didn't evolve.
Yeah, we don't have more hours in the day, right?
The evolution doesn't happen that fast. So we are still able to process visual 60 times faster than we would process, for example, text. And that's why the need for visual content is becoming way more important nowadays as well. And I see it as well that marketers, you know, they see this trend, they see that there's a demand for this, they see that you know, people love Netflix, what is the magic of Netflix? People love YouTube, they can spend so much time on YouTube, so they are looking into more the formats that the audience wants to engage with as well.
No, I mean, I totally agree. I literally was having a conversation last week with the fact that I feel that now if anyone wants to make a topic kind of mainstream, they need to make a Netflix documentary or something like that. I mean, we talk about me being a little bit of a history buff, knowing about things like Chernobyl, and then suddenly HBO brought out the series. And I had all these people saying, "Did you hear about this thing that happened?" And I was like, "Of course I heard about it," but you don't realize that it's not. You know, if you want to hit mainstream, it's like Netflix, HBO, and so on. It's the new, like you said, it's the new way of consuming knowledge. Let's say.
Yeah, definitely.
Perfect. So, I mean, it kind of leads me on a little bit, because I think that as we talked about previously, I'm starting in a new role, and content, I don't think anyone needs to convince me that content is important. We know that it's important, but you're always kind of thinking where to start. How much is it, in your opinion, where would you start when it comes to content? You can make video, you can make blogs, you can make infographics. Is it good to take kind of one piece of content and serve it in different channels? What's your opinion on that?
I mean, that's definitely a good idea. This is how you can make the most out of it, that you would basically try to reuse existing content and basically turn it into different formats. So you could have something that is like more written form, like an article, blog article, or a LinkedIn article, and then, turn it into an ebook maybe, or like a downloadable PDF, then have a short video about it. Then you could also recycle it and do a webinar based on this topic, because obviously different types of content work with different types of audience as well, right? Some people actually prefer reading, the other ones prefer just listening to a podcast because they are commuting to work and it just works better for them. Why others video works very well for them, and maybe they won't even they will put it on mute and they will just watch with subtitles. So reusing content makes sense, but at the same time, when you're getting started nowadays, I have to say it's so much more difficult than it was years ago. Just 5 years, even 5 years ago, it was so much easier to build a blog post, blog from scratch and make it successful, because it was still a lot of people were investing in content, but it was a lot of experimenting. People were trying new things. Maybe there was this trend. I used to work at a group in the past, and actually they came up with this idea of honest sharing of how their company grows, and that was a hit. Everyone wanted to read it because there were a lot of other founders. It helped them to acquire customers because people felt this connection with them as a brand, that they are being honest as well, and that could have been very successful but nowadays, if you are launching a new blog, it's very difficult to be successful. It's because there is too much competition. There is so much content created every single hour, and I would actually recommend for someone who, let's say, doesn't have a blog, is starting new, it's a newer company, to try other formats, invest in things like videos. It's way easier to engage with audience. Maybe it doesn't really make sense to have your own blog. Obviously blog would help you with organic traffic, so that's an advantage, but it's going to be more difficult to get noticed. It might make sense to think about other ways. A good example is Demio. So I just did with them recently a podcast. They launched a series of podcasts called SaaS breakthrough. So they focus on interviewing different SaaS marketers, and that's actually their main way of generating traffic and also interest, and how they drove brand awareness. But what they did is, because podcast, it's very difficult to index, right? How are you going to index it for organic traffic? So what they do, they take a transcript of the podcast, so they still put it as a just a recording of the voice, but then they put a transcript as text on their website, and that still indexes. And I would say that this is even better, because it's also user-generated content. So it's a natural language. It's not something that you were writing for the sake of writing for SEO. So probably this will also have high chance for generating traffic, but you have to be creative nowadays. You have to think about what would you do differently? Maybe not your own blog. Maybe you start driving engagement on LinkedIn and publishing articles on LinkedIn. Maybe you become an influencer on Medium, because it's way easier to reach audience on Medium. Okay, maybe it's not going to help with SEO, but this is how you could attract audience. So just kind of thinking out of the box.
I mean,
better nowadays.
I think one of the questions I wanted to ask you, and I think we almost answered it. I mean, it might be hard for people to hear, but having a really good thing to say, or a really good piece of content, it's not enough anymore, right? You have to think about distribution and channel. I just imagine this graveyard of amazing blog posts that never got read, because if you don't think about who's going to read them and where, it's a challenge, right?
Yeah, it is. It definitely is. it's not easy, there is this whole trend, or like there was a trend of like 7 ways to do XYZ and so on. And suddenly everyone was just publishing this blog post until everyone got fed up of this blog post as well. And I still think that one thing that will stay and has proven to always work throughout the time is storytelling. So, no one wants to read, first of all, like people scan through content, right? And they don't want to read like this boring introductions, like you're writing an essay and so on. So actually a person from my team, Robin, he gave me a very good advice, and I love it. I always repeat it. He says, write the way you talk. So he has this practice that whenever he writes a blog post, he would read it out loud and think about it. Is it the way I would actually talk to someone? Like if someone asked me about this topic, is this the way I would explain the topic? And this is a very good check, because this way you will know if it's natural and if it's actually a story that people want to listen. And from the beginning of humanity, like if you think about it, people always loved stories, right? And because that's something you can relate to, it's interesting, you already grabbed the interest from the beginning. But something as boring as like, you start with the general introduction, then you do these points, like 7 different ways of doing something, that's not engaging. And I noticed that even though it is harder to stand out with the blog posts, usually the ones that I publish where there is a story, like even a personal one, where, I say like, this was my experience with this, this is how it ended up, and very practical, like even showing screenshots and how I did it. That's what people want to read, because these best practices kind of work the best way, and not like this dry type of content.
Yeah, I mean, I think it leads into this thing that I've seen it even, it comes to when you like, I feel like even infographics, it had this little period in time where because marketers were trying to kind of cheat the system and cut corners, I was seeing infographics that were just literally blog content, just words put into a graphic and posted on, Pinterest, because they were like, okay, we're going to go to a new channel, but they don't realize that every channel has its own, its own persona and its own way of communicating. I don't think that, like you said, that it seems like one of the trends in content is just to really do it organically and naturally, because if people have a really good radar for this year when someone's trying to cheat the system.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it has to be authentic. And even more so now, I feel that, in general, we have to reinvent a bit the way we are doing marketing and sales. I don't know if this is the case for you, but I noticed that still a lot of brands didn't get it right. There are brands that did get it right, and they went the right direction. But I get so many emails since the whole pandemic happened, sales email, like pure cold sales emails. And every single person asked for the same thing. Like, I don't even know what is this product if I need it. And the first thing they asked me, like, would you have 30 minutes to talk to me? And imagine I get like 50 emails like that. So if I would schedule 30 minutes with every single person, I would not have time to work. Or have time off.
Absolutely.
It's completely not feasible.
It just feels like people kind of realize that, the pandemic came, so sales were harder, but instead of pivoting or changing, they just turned the tap on even more and tried to go, I'm the same. I mean, it's probably a different topic, but the fact that people don't think that your time is valuable, they think they're asking you for something that is free, it's a whole different topic. But like you said, I mean, when you even the thing to remember, like you're a new parent. I've got children. My 9 to 5 isn't a 9 to 5 anymore. I sometimes need to consume content at 10 p.m. or like you said, a really great tip is sometimes I need to consume video content, but I don't have my headphones. I don't have the loudspeaker. It has to be with subtitles. So people just need to kind of sometimes just hit pause, stop, and think about the new consumer and what their new reality is.
Yeah, and actually, what customers value the most is you saving their time. Right? So you always have to put yourself in the customer's shoes and think about like, okay, what is the situation right now and how I could save their time. And that's why like all the short form visuals or videos, they work the best, and also when you do a webinar, try to do a 30 minutes webinar instead of 1 hour. Try to make it as engaging as possible so people can ask their questions as well. If you have a longer video, maybe do a shorter teaser video. We actually like now are launching as well a product like this that allows it to shorten your existing long style videos like webinars or podcasts into a very short, crisp pieces of content, like 15 seconds, which you could use on social media, where someone who doesn't have time maybe to consume the whole thing, you could just put the highlights in the video. And this way, the person gets still a grasp of what has been happening, or of some sort of a learning, without the need of investing a lot of time. And often, even when you read the blogs, there is this trend that at the beginning of the blog, you would put kind of like a table of content with hyperlinks. So you don't force the audience to, and you are not unrealistic thinking that someone is going to spend now 15 minutes reading your, 2,000 words. But instead, they want to learn something specific. So you just put hyperlinks and allow them to go to the specific paragraph. And that's also okay, because you deliver some sort of value. And I think at the end of the day, this whole authenticity and delivering value, this is what is the most important. And that's why I brought also this example of the sales emails, because I think that we really need to reinvent ourselves both in marketing and sales, and think about it. How can I deliver value to someone, and how can I build connections? And these connections right now are so important as well. And that's why a lot of smart companies are going now for webinars, podcasts, trainings, and so on, because that's something that delivers value. It's like a bit more subtle way of selling or doing marketing versus I'm just going to write you an email and tell you I want 30 minutes of your time without giving anything in return. And I think it's so much better if you actually have something educational, like webinar, where people can increase their knowledge. And in a subtle way, still, they will learn a bit about your product, but it's not like you are being pushy and people have to defend themselves, oh no, and yet another person that wants something from me.
And I mean, they won't even give you that chance anymore, right? If somebody feels that they're going to be sold to or pitched it, they will stop before you can even have a chance. And I think that they have the right to do that. I think that is the market that we live in. And I think I totally agree. I think it's really, really important. I think one question I had for you, which I would love your opinion on, which is one thing that I got tied down with. So I started at TRAFFIT, and I'm like, okay, we need content. I think I want to do video. I know video, it's great. And then the point where I think, hopefully not just me, but some other people get caught is, at what level of quality does the production need to be, or the graphics? Is it okay to kind of get started with your mobile phone on a stand, or you're using your laptop, or you jump into Piktochart and you just try to use the templates? Or is there really a sense where I got this idea of, okay, I need to buy a 4K camera, I need to get a graphic designer? What's your Can you just get started, or at what point does quality really matter?
I think you could totally I wouldn't recommend to immediately investing in the graphic designer, because you don't know yet what is going to work and what's not going to work, right? You should start first with experimenting and finding your niche, what would work the best for your audience as well. And I think tools like Piktochart or similar tools like this are a good start, because you have professionally designed templates by designers, right? So it will still look professional, but the time effort you have to put into creating it is very low, because you just take a ready template, maybe apply your brand colors super fast, and you could have really professionally looking assets done by someone who is not a designer in 10 minutes, which is way shorter. And also graphic designer usually needs way more time, because it is time consuming to create it from scratch, think about it and so on. And often you don't have this time as well. So I think it is a good starting point. But when it comes to video, in the past it was very much about let's be professional. I think even before the pandemic, I feel that actually the pandemic has helped a bit with removing this need for it has to look professional, you need to have a studio and lighting and so on. And now on LinkedIn you see a lot of people just recording themselves with this head talking videos where someone records themselves with a mobile phone. And we got so used to it, and somehow accepted it as a new reality after everyone started working remotely. everyone went on Zoom or Google Meet or any other, meeting platforms, we see how people leave. There's sometimes a cat or a dog there, a baby crying, and so on. In the past, it would have been like unacceptable, but now it's a new normal because everyone is in the same situation. So you cannot judge anyone because this is the situation applies to you as well. And I feel that it removed a bit this mask, it brought people closer. Everything became a bit more authentic, and we kind of let both customers and our colleagues into our personal lives. So before we would go to the office from 9 to 5, and this is the working me, the version of me. And then you would go home and maybe put your jogging outfit and you would be like a completely different person. And, I feel that people still feel it, customers feel it as well, that this is not the authentic you. But if you show your authentic face, you automatically start building credibility and trust as well. And I think that this is actually an okay thing. And that's why I wouldn't worry about it that maybe the video is not super professional. As long as you're bringing value, you are talking authentically and building a story, telling something interesting, everything that is in the background is going to be just an additional thing, right?
And like you said, it's an equalizer. Luckily, not many people have access. I've even seen some of the mainstream talk shows, like John Oliver from HBO. He's now in a room on his own, no audience. And it took a little bit of adapting when you watch the content, but instantly, like you said, when the content is valuable, you forget the rest. And it's funny. So it's kind of coming back to the point that we had before, that content, two kind of things to remember is, one, you can have really good content, but if it's not distributed correctly, it won't be valuable to other people. But if you have great distribution and not very valuable content, it's also not going to work. You have to really match those things together.
Yeah, that's true. It has to be a good mix, because there are a lot of people who have a very good content, but they just really have no idea how to distribute this content, and it's tough at the beginning, right? So that's why it comes down to really building your network and connections. That's really important. And thinking who could be the people that was going to help you. And I think it's also don't be afraid to ask, right? That's usually what has worked. Try to build initial lists of people who might be interested, who could help, but don't pitch them immediately. If you want someone's help to distribute your content, first maybe ask them for feedback. That's a good practice. Try to basically show them that you value their opinion as well. And actually, it usually will help you, because it probably will make your content even better if they add their inputs. Or if you create content, maybe don't write it only from your perspective, but include some quotes or opinions from other people. Create a guide where it's you consolidate opinions on a specific topic from experts. And usually, if this is going to be the case, because you quote these people as well, and they are part of it, they will be keen on their own to share it. You will not need to tell them please share it and you have to do it and so on. They will do it on their own as well. It's going to be a bit more natural. So I think that could be the right approach at the beginning. Try to involve experts. Admit it that there are people who maybe know more about this topic and who have a larger network for the specific area of business as well.
No, I to be honest, you've just reminded me of an idea like that, right? And I think this is really a great thing. Is like you said, people are interested a lot of the time in your perspective of something if you're going through a process. So right now I'm learning everything about human resources technology, which I really had little knowledge, but I have in that back of my mind that I should just write about it, keep notes, and maybe share that experience of who did I learn from, who did I speak to. And like you said, it's also about giving them a little bit of credit, right? I mean, I think it's fair to say when you learn from somebody that it's nice to mention them. It's always a good relationship builder. But it kind of leads me into one of the next questions I have is, one thing that you are great at is you make content partnerships. You're really good at making partnerships and co-authored content. I guess a couple of questions is, one would be, what kind of drew you to go down that road of not just building your own content, but collaborating? And two, how do you decide who to collaborate with, let's say?
Yeah, okay. I think it's already like a longer story because I tried to do this partnership since a longer time, right? And I think first time was when I did it with my previous startup SimScale, when we were looking into different ways how we could generate leads. And we noticed that basically when we do webinars in partnerships, like with some experts in specific areas or people who have a large following, that, you know, we were suddenly getting so many more signups than if we did it on our own. And we kind of like turned it into like a lead generation model. And later on also, like, you know, I always try to like also involve competitors and like speak to competitors, like, you know, build some relationships with them. Because I overall believe, like, I'm not a big believer in this, that this competition, like, you know, going against each other, that it's gonna work long term. I feel that like collaboration is so much better. It's a way better idea, because at the end of the day, both of you can win versus like, you know, if you compete, someone has to lose, right? So that's why, like, I feel that you can do it in so many different areas. But when it comes to content partnerships, it's obviously easier to do it with your indirect competitors. So usually, let's say now you mentioned that you're in the area of HR, right? Like, you know that this is your target audience. So I think this is the number one thing. First of all, you need to define who is your target audience, who is your potential buyer persona. Once you have this understanding, you also start understanding, okay, what type of tools are they using? Like, you know, where do they spend their time online? And that's will open ideas for potential partnerships. So you're not going to look for your direct competitors, but you look for supplementary products or services. So let's say someone who operates within the same target audience, but he's not really competing with you, but he's just serving the same target audience, and where you would find like some sort of common topics. So just to give you an example from Piktochart, what we are doing right now, right? Like, we want to do a partnership webinar around human resources, and we'll be doing it with a company called Personio. And in this case, we are not competing at all, right? Like, they are HR software. But we do have some common topics, because they also focus, like, for example, on onboarding or reporting. They have built-in reporting within their platform, but usually this reporting, it's something that, you know, you would give access to maybe only head of HR and CEO, right? But often you would want to report on your data to a larger audience within the company. And what Piktochart offers is that we do offer reports. So basically a visual version of reports, which is makes it easier for like an audience which is maybe not like specialized in the topic to understand it, because you would basically visualize your data to make it more understandable and like easier to consume. And in this way, we are kind of complementary, right? Because they have all this reporting and data and tracking, and then you could take this data and visualize it in a report that would be created in Piktochart. And then it's interesting for both of our audiences. So it's kind of like, you know, natural choice that you could like partner on a webinar like this as well, where you would bring value as well to the attendee. So I think like just basically really looking into areas like that, like, you know, for partnerships, no matter if it's a webinar, if it's a content partnership, like maybe you would want to do an ebook. What is the common area? Like, is there overlap in the target audience?
Yeah, I mean, it makes total sense. I mean, and like you said before, sometimes you just got to ask the question. I mean, you know, asking your customer, even if you've got a few, only if you've got like 5 or 10 customers, just asking them what other tools do they use day to day, and learning more inside what they use. Like you said, you know, I think the days are gone of one tool that serves everything. Most businesses now and individual users, they'll use a magnitude of different tools at different
times. Exactly.
So it makes sense. So, you know, again, we were talking before about trying to explain. I think, you know, I've got kind of 2 key questions left for everyone that's watching. We're going to get to the key ones. And, you know, the first one of those is, obviously, if you want to, I obviously recommend to everyone watching the video to go to Piktochart, look at the content, look at the blog, look at what Agata's team's making. But so Agata, outside of yourselves, who is doing this in a good way? Who do you follow? Whose content do you like? Who's setting a good example that the people watching today's video could go and have a look at and get some inspiration?
I think for people who are interested in creating good content and really nailing content creation, I would recommend reading the blog by Animals. So it's like with Z at the end, Animals. It's a US-based content agency. And they have really, really good blog posts on like, how to do content audit, how to create the right content. There was a very interesting blog post as well that they wrote about why often venture-backed companies fail at content marketing. And it's usually because of lack of patience as well, right? But they actually show it in a very interesting way, like, why you need to have patience for content to work. So it's a really good blog as well for people starting with content, where they need to do a lot of convincing for maybe, the CEO, because a lot of these questions are being answered there as well. And they give very good tips on how to make your content work. So I would definitely recommend following this. They are very good in this area. I also follow people like, a lot of people follow him as well, is Neil Patel, because he always like, he is very good with sharing his insights in video and like, what we should be doing with SEO, with content. His whole business is also based on the success of content. He tried various different formats. When infographics were in, he actually was able to drive a lot of traffic with infographics. Now he switched a bit more to the video content, and he's driving majority of his traffic with video. And he gives really good tips, like, how to get started with video, what is important, how often to share, how to produce it, and so on. So that's also something that you could follow. I would also recommend to, like, even look at websites and like companies which aren't specifically focused on content but are doing content well. And I have this one example, like I always try to do like a competitive analysis of, content space as well, comparing competitors. And I did this when I was at Groove, and Groove is a help desk software, right? So I obviously looked at other help desk solution and what they do with content well. And a lot of interesting things came out as well. Like there was this one example from Help Scout where they created basically this one landing page with, I think it was remote work or customer support statistics. So they basically consolidated different statistics from all over the internet and really nicely visualized the statistics. And this is one of their best performing content pieces. And why? Because, they have, I think, 100 statistics. People don't have to search all over the internet for 5 or 6 different web pages. They have it all like in one place. And that's also something that I would recommend, that, if you want to go after a content, think about it, like first analyze what is out there about this topic and how can you make a better version of it that would bring value to the user, right? So you always have to aim like, okay, let's not copy and do the same thing, but what would make mine better? And usually what I see that the content pieces that are the most successful is some sort of like, ultimate guide, or like a consolidation of all of these things as well. Because then people have just one place they need to go to. Maybe they can bookmark it and they know that this is the place where they will find all of the information versus 5 different pages they would have to go to. That's often a good approach as well.
It's everything makes sense. I've lately, from doing email marketing and marketing automation, there's the website that's literally called reallygoodemails.com. And like you said, you can go out and find blog posts that show 4 or 5 examples, and then there's this one mega, collection of all these emails that's constantly improving. And like you said, it just became the go-to place until, and I find it very hard to think that there will be a day that I won't get what I need from them. And that's I trust them now, basically.
That's a good tip. I have to check it out.
It's really, really good. I mean, and again, I also think as a little growth hack, the business you're in, go and check if the domain really good whatyoudo.com is available, because I think that I think AppQs do it as well. They have something called, I want to say really good UX, but it might not be, so don't quote me, but we can Google it. And they do the same. So they started just, even though they're a brand, they're just taking lots of examples of companies that do nice onboarding, nice visuals, and also it takes them away from having to only talk to their customers. They became a little bit more impartial, and they can show a good onboarding using a competitor if they want to. But because like you said, again, normally we're first looking for knowledge and insight, and then we're looking for a product to deliver it right. So if you can deliver the first part, it's very, very helpful. So Agata, I think that, we'll do a little recap at the end, but my last question, and this is one that I can't let go of. I always do this one, which is, what are like the one or two things you would really recommend people do kind of tomorrow? Like maybe the thing that you think is probably most undervalued, or something that you did recently that you didn't realize would give you some kind of return, or, what are those couple of like really just very straightforward advices that someone can do the next couple of days?
I think maybe like a content audit, because
Okay.
I feel that everyone does something with content. It's a bit hard to say like, go do a video or something like that. Because maybe not everyone does it, right? And then you have to have a setup. It's maybe not something that you could do. But I feel that everyone does something with content where they could start with an audit, because this is a starting point as well to understanding like what can be improved. And you can look into where are you now, how are you doing. And I feel that this is often a mistake as well, that, we are so into like, oh, we're going to do this and that and so on. But we forget about like, okay, does this what we are doing right now actually make sense? Mm-hmm. And I feel that you often need to take a step back to really understand, like, does it make sense to continue this what we are doing only because we have been doing it for a year? Does it actually bring results? Maybe we just should stop doing it and, I don't know, shift to video or something like this. But the other thing, if you do have video, or if you are looking into producing video, I would recommend really like looking a bit more into this. There's one initiative that we did last year. So we had some videos as well on YouTube, and we kind of like were under investing in our YouTube channel. And we were able to drive so much more traffic and high influx of leads by just basically optimizing our current videos. So video descriptions, adding a link, adding a call to action at the end of the video. And that's not even that complicated because you can do it directly in YouTube. And instead of like, doing the videos that we thought are useful for the audience, we actually put an effort to understand like what people really want to learn, right? So first of all, we looked at questions from customer support. What are the common things that people continue asking us? Yep. And then there is a very useful website called Answer the Public, where you can input a search term, like, I don't know, let's say it would be infographic, right? Like the search term. And it shows you actual questions being asked on Google related to this term. And this is like a gold mine for ideas for videos, right? Because then okay, like a lot of people are asking like how to create infographic, or it can be a lot of more complicated questions which would not even come to your mind, and actually then you understand that this is what people need. And this way, like, you can plan a bit your content better. And that after the audit, I think content planning is a very important aspect, like understanding your users, where are the gaps, what content you need to create, like basically thinking first about topics, what makes sense from the perspective of the user, but also from the perspective of SEO, and then thinking which format for the specific topic would be the best. And that's how we do it. Like we build a content calendar. We first think about like, what are the topics, like what really makes sense. And then we think, okay, for this specific topic, webinar actually makes most sense. For this, video would be the best. For the other one, let's do a blog post about this topic. And it's easier to do it this way versus like, let's think about the blog post. What are going to be the topics of the blog post? Because the reality is you have to think about different formats. Like, it's not enough anymore that you're just going to say, no, let's do blog post. It doesn't work, but we're still just going to do it. Like, you need to experiment because you will probably find the format that works best for you. And it might be that for one company, it's a webinar, while for the other one, it's video, or podcast.
No, it's completely true. I know that Brand 24, we went through that, earlier this year, where we stopped creating content just to look back and optimize, and the changes were phenomenal. So, that's so true. There is even companies that I spoke to, and, if you Google that company, their blog post from 2016 is still the most popular one, and they've just ignored it. They haven't updated it. They don't realize that it's got really good placement in SEO and so on. So I think that's a phenomenal tip. So Agata, again, we talked about the nice, perfect time of content. So I think we're going to wrap it up. Where can people connect with you? It's great that you're connected, obviously, through Infoshare, but where do you want people to find you? Twitter, Instagram, what's the best place for people to follow?
I think like probably LinkedIn. I post mostly on LinkedIn. I'm obviously as well on Twitter and Instagram as well. But I think like on LinkedIn, I usually share the most of the content and like, my thoughts and some best practices for marketing perspective. So there they could follow me as well. Or they can reach out to me Piktochart as well.
Sign up for Piktochart, obviously. I mean, this makes the most sense.
I try to publish also from time to time some blog posts which are really focused on best practices from my perspective. Okay. The last one that I published was on about advertising on Instagram, and I created this formula that will help you to create engaging Instagram ads, and I give a bit of background, like why Instagram works, based on my own example when I became a mom and I became a perfect Instagram victim. I'm sure parents can relate, so I recommend you to read it.
Perfect. Well, Agata, thank you so much for your time. I think it was, super valuable. Again, I've been super selfish. I've got a new role, and all these things are starting. So I've got my notes, and I'll be watching the recording back. So thank you so much, and I really look forward to working with you. And I hope that everyone that watched the video has value. And keep your eyes out for more Infoshare talks coming up in the near future with some more cool people. So yeah, thanks so much again. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I really appreciate it as well. Thanks for your time, and let's stay connected. Maybe we can do some partnerships as well.
Absolutely. Cool. Thanks. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.